To hear exclusive audiobooks not available on YouTube, visit the links in the description below. Thank you for your support. Japan's Biological Warfare in China by Yanjun. Chapter 3. Human Experimentation. From its launch to its demise between 1933 and 1945, Unit 731 was engaged in inhumane, uncivilized, and unethical experimentation on prisoners from China, the Soviet Union, and Korea. They were murdered by vivisection, infection, and exposure to cold, as Japan conducted research to prepare for and initiate bacteriological warfare. In the name of national interest, scientific research, and medical development, Unit 731 deliberately tortured, injured, and killed people, and yet no charges were brought during the Tokyo trials against those responsible for these appalling and inhumane war crimes. Having evaded their due punishment, in the post-war era, the military surgeons involved put aside their mask of evil and openly served in public posts in Japanese military entities, educational institutions, and colleges. Some of them capitalized on the knowledge and experience gained from Unit 731 to achieve political status and economic rewards, while others used the results of their human experimentation to claim doctorates and professorships. Some reaped exorbitant profits by opening private hospitals and pharmaceutical companies. These doctors or experts never reflected on their past. Instead, they occupied important positions in Japanese medical circles, allowing them to conceal their criminal behavior and leaving profound social implications and inestimable post-war damage. Therefore, a review and reflection upon the war responsibilities, medical morality, and occupational ethics of Japan's medical profession constitutes a topic of both historical value and genuine importance. Top secret. In 1933, the newly established Unit 731 built the Zhongma prison camp in Beiyinhe, Wuchang, for the purpose of detaining prisoners involved in the struggle against the occupation and providing subjects for human experimentation. In 1938, when Unit 731 was setting up its headquarters in Pingfang, it designed the Sifang building, the core zone for human experimentation, and the special prison for containing Maruta. Sifang building was large in scale, 150 meters long and 100 meters wide, surrounded by 4 three-story structures. The special prison was composed of 2 two-story buildings capable of holding over 400 prisoners at any given time. Meanwhile, Unit 731 colluded covertly with the Kwantung Army Military Police, the Police Office, the Security Bureau, and the intelligence agencies to conduct extensive and large-scale special transfers in an attempt to guarantee the supply of live subjects for experimentation. As part of its human experimentation, Unit 731 set up a bacteriological research division to cultivate bacteria and carry out related experimentation and research. Within its organizational structure, various research groups were opened according to the categories of bacteriological research and named after the person in charge. These included Takahashi Group on plague, Yersinia pestis, Minato Group on cholera, Oda Group on anthrax, Futatsugi Group on tubercle bacillus, Kasahara Group on viruses, Yoshimura Group on frostbite, Ajima Group on Shigella bacteria, Okamoto Group on pathology, and Utsumi Group on serum. In total, Unit 731 studied over 50 bacteria and germs. At the same time, it set up laboratories for experimentation on and storage of poisonous gas outside the Sifang building, studying and producing poisonous warfare agents, gas masks, and protective clothing. The Sifang building and the special prison were the central region for human experimentation and the most highly classified of all the covert operations of Unit 731. Once, The subjects of experimentation were sent to Unit 731 in special transfer. They were deprived of every right, detained in the special prison, and assigned a 3-digit number without name, occupation, age, or anything else that might indicate their identity. They became Maruta, a unique name in Unit 731. Once part of Unit 731, these Maruta were not subjected to immediate experiments. Instead, they were fed regularly and encouraged to exercise properly so as to remain in a healthy state. Whenever any research lab required a subject for experimentation, one of those who had been restored to good health was picked up from the special prison, and their 3-digit code number was written on the blackboard. As to the number of experiment victims, Kiyoshi Kawashima, head of Division 1, confessed during the Khabarovsk war crime trials that from 1940 to 1945, at least 3,000 people were exterminated by fatal bacterial infection in this laboratory of death. But he was not clear about the exact number of victims before 1940. Since the unit destroyed or transferred almost all its files during its fall in flight, no records about its victims during the years between 1933 and 1938 have yet been found. But in line with the survivors' testimony, the number is certain to have exceeded 3,000. Activities. The victims of Unit 731 included captives, intelligence agents, laborers, farmers, craftsmen, women, and children. The types of experimentation were also diverse, including vivisection, exposure to frostbite and poisonous gas, airborne infection, oral administration, hypodermic injection, and infection by explosive devices. Vivisection. Unit 731 carried out its inhumane vivisection on men and women, teenagers, and even infants. When doing so, it did not generally anesthetize the victims, but only strapped their limbs and heads to the operating tables. As such operations were frequent, the operating tables were all equipped with this strapping equipment. Once the Maruta were restrained, medical gauze was stuffed into their mouths to muffle their screams. Torao Yoshifusa, of the former headquarters of the Kwantung Army Military Police, confessed that he once accompanied Major General Mamoru Hara, General Officer commanding Division 9 of the Kwantung Army, to inspect Unit 731. He said that they walked along a corridor for about 3 meters and turned left into the vivisection lab. There, 3 Japanese military surgeons were crowded together looking at something. As soon as they caught a glimpse of Shiro Ishii, they stood up immediately and raised their hands to salute until Ishii instructed them to carry on their work. In the center of the room was a substantial vivisection table, upon which a body was lying, causing the observers to throw up into their masks. Ishii sneered, "It takes a lot of guts to work here." But some military surgeons turned into maniacs. The grotesque activities in which they were involved had a steady dehumanizing effect on the doctors involved, which is evident from the fact that they even took one of their own Unit 731 members as a subject for human experimentation. The confession by Yoshio Shinozuka, a former junior assistant of Unit 731, whose birth name was Yoshio Tamura, revealed the details of this particular incident. Yoshio Sudo was a member of Section 1, Division 4. He caught the plague as a result of his work on the production of plague bacteria. Shinozuka was an assistant to Hosoya, who carried out human vivisections in his lab. Hosoya was in the process of dissecting a Chinese victim when Yoshio Sudo was sent to the lab, gasping out his last breaths. Suzuki ordered Hosoya to dissect Yoshio Sudo. Oral administration, injection, and infection experimentation. After World War II, Norbert Fell from Fort Detrick went to Japan to investigate Shiro Ishii, Tomasada Masuda, Junichi Kaneko, and Ryoichi Naito. On June 20, 1947, he wrote the Brief Summary of New Information about Japanese Biowarfare Activities, commonly known as the Fell Report. It recounted how Unit 731 experimented on human beings through oral administration, injection, and infection to study anthrax, plague, typhoid, paratyphi A and B, dysentery, cholera, and glanders. All data cited in the report were derived from the human experimentation records. Fell noted that Unit 731 gauged minimum infection doses and lethal doses of various bacteria. They treated their human victims like animals. Fell documented shocking information, describing how a rubber tube was inserted into the noses of 3 testees, who were infected by inhaling about 0.1 milligrams of bacteria. He also wrote that the median infective dose of anthrax bacteria was 10 milligrams through hypodermic injection, while that of oral administration was 50 milligrams. The mortality rate of the former was 66%, and the mortality rate of the latter was 90%. The mortality rate of open wounds and inhalant infection was 100%. The median infective dose of subjects undergoing hypodermic injection of plague bacteria, Yersinia pestis, was 10 milligrams, while that through oral administration was 0.1 milligrams. The infection rate of those taking in air with an intensity of 5 milligrams per cubic meters for 10 seconds was 80%, with an incubation period of about 3 to 5 days after direct infection. Death ensued after 3 to 7 days of fever. The median infective dose of typhoid bacteria through oral administration was 4 milligrams. Paratyphi A and B was 1 milligram. Shigella was 10 milligrams, and cholera was 10 milligrams. Death generally ensued within 5 days. With glanders, the median infective dose by hypodermic injection was 0.2 milligrams, and the mortality rate was 20%. Yataro Ueda was an assistant who took part in comparative experiments on plague bacteria. He confessed at the Fushun War Criminals Management Center that his unit injected 0.1 grams of plague bacteria into 5 victims, 0.2 grams in another 5, and 0.3 grams in a third group of 5. They produced a table with the results of their comparative observations. They then gave 0.1 grams, 0.2 grams, and 0.3 grams of plague bacteria to other groups of 5 testees through embedding and formulated another table for the results. The third table also covered groups of 5 testees who took 0.1 grams, 0.2 grams, and 0.3 grams of plague bacteria orally. The total of 45 subjects used in one single plague experiment provides testimony to the vast scale of human experimentation by Unit 731 and the huge numbers of victims. In the minds of the military surgeons involved, Maruta were simply their experimental subjects, material from which they could glean more accurate and detailed data and extract information that could not be obtained by other methods. Their behavior ran contrary to every medical principle known to human society, and their criminal conduct trampled heedlessly on human rights and dignity. Outdoor human experimentation. To conduct large-scale outdoor human experimentation, Unit 731 set up the Chengzigu Outdoor Experimental Field in the Pingfang headquarters, the Anda Experimental Field in today's Anda of Heilongjiang Province, and the Taolaijiao Experimental Field in today's Fuyu of Jilin Province. The memoirs of Unit 731 veterans, the Thompson Report, the Fell Report, and the Inglis Report all document information about Unit 731's outdoor human experimentation. Most of Unit 731's indoor and outdoor experiments involved plague bacteria as an aggressive agent. Fell wrote in his report that during the plague experiments, the testees were imprisoned in a room while bacteria were sprayed from the air by plane. The infection rate was 30% to 100%, and the mortality rate was at least 60%. In the explosion experiments, Uji ceramic bombs with a detonating fuse contained infected fleas and sand. About 80% of the fleas could survive the explosion. In a room of 10 square meters, an explosion experiment was carried out on 10 testees, 8 of whom were contaminated after being bitten by the fleas, and 6 of whom died afterwards. Unit 731 also stuffed anthrax, plague, typhoid, cholera, glanders, dysentery, and paratyphoid bacteria into bombs for outdoor human experimentation. According to Naval Aspects of Biological Warfare by Thomas B. Inglis.
In most cases, the human subjects were tied to stakes and protected with helmets and body armor. The bombs of various types were exploded either statically or with time fuses after being dropped from aircraft. In one trial with 15 subjects, 6 were killed as a result of wounds from the bombs, and 4 were infected with bomb fragments. 3 of these 4 subjects died. In another trial with a more efficient bomb, Uji, 4 of 10 subjects were considered to have been infected by the respiratory route. All 4 of these latter subjects died. However, these 4 subjects were only 25 meters from the nearest of the 9 bombs that were exploded in a valley.
Unit 731 not only used human beings for outdoor experiments, but also horses, cows, sheep, and other animals. According to the Thompson Report,
For the anthrax trials, the bomb was statically exploded at a height of 15 meters. Animals were then allowed to graze for 1 or 2 hours downwind of the explosion over the contaminated ground. Infection, followed by death from anthrax, resulted in almost 70% of the horses and 90% of the sheep allowed to graze over the contaminated ground.
frostbite experiments. Unit 731 had a frostbite lab to conduct frostbite experiments and nurture dry bacteria and study methods of preventing and treating frostbite. As the papers by Hisato Yoshimura, the head of the frostbite lab, on frostbite experiments and other materials were discovered and revealed, the whole process of this experiment was also made public. Hisato Yoshimura wrote, on frostbite experiments, on October 26, 1941. Based on the paper, it can be determined that the data adopted by Yoshimura came from the results of frostbite experiments. Unit 731 was not alone in conducting these vile experiments. Other epidemic prevention and water purification departments were also involved. According to the report of hygiene studies in winter by the occupation forces in Mongolia, in March 1941, the Epidemic Prevention and Water Purification Department of the North China Army and the Epidemic Prevention and Water Purification Department of the Mongolian garrison jointly carried out a frostbite experiment in Sonnet of the Western Zilingol League. The subjects of the experiment were 8 Chinese: Liu Chun, 27 years old; Pan Chun, 22 years old; Gao Fu, 33 years old; Xia Guan, 15 years old; Gao Bai, 49 years old; Hao Gui, 35 years old; Zhang Yi, 21 years old; and Chen Yuan, 38 years old. With parts of their names omitted, the victims were rendered anonymous by the Japanese Army. According to the documents, the goal of the experiment was to serve the needs of the health services during war in the extreme cold in Inner Mongolia and prepare for future battles. During the experiment, the Epidemic Prevention and Water Purification Departments interpreted the effects of extreme cold by observing the pathological changes and characteristics of the subjects at different times and recording pertinent data, complemented by systematic photos. This document contained very detailed data of frostbite experiments on live victims. It recorded that between 6:30 to 9:30 a.m. on February 6, 1941, when the outdoor temperature was 24 to 27 degrees centigrade below zero and the wind speed was 5 meters per second, the testes were laid on their backs on stretchers to observe the progress of frostbite. The Japanese divided the subjects into 5 types: those with bare hands and wet socks, those wearing wet gloves and undersized boots, those having drunk alcohol, those with empty bellies, and those on atropine. The 8 subjects were first exposed to the agony of frostbite and then subjected to cruel vivisection. The Japanese took photos of the scene and offered the following hypocritical condolences to the victims.
You sacrificed your life for the medical progress of mankind.
Poisonous gas experiments. To prepare for and carry out gas warfare, Unit 731 set up a gas lab. I went to Archives 2 of the U.S. National Archives and Records Administration to look up the related records. Unit 731 set up a gas lab with subordinate research, production, experimentation, and anti-gas divisions. It divided gases into various types and studied and produced gas masks and protective clothing. It studied and produced Ishii gas testers, Ishii anti-gas drugs, Ishii gas test strips, and disinfectors. Based on the gas masks collected from the ruins of Unit 731 and the scale of the old sites of the gas lab and gas storage room, and the corresponding contents recorded in the archives, it is clear that Unit 731 conducted not only secret research into bacterial weapons with the intention of pursuing biological warfare, but also research into gas warfare with the same purpose. It is not widely known that Unit 731 conducted gas experiments on a considerable scale and experimented on human beings during its research into and production of gas weapons. According to The Last Words of a General, Diary of Saburo Endo, on November 16, 1933, Saburo Endo, together with Colonel Adachi and Lieutenant Colonel Tachibana, inspected the experiments on the experimental field of the traffic squadron. Group 2 carried out experiments on poisonous gas and liquid, while Group 1 carried out experiments on electricity. The 2 groups experimented on 2 bandits each. One subject of the 5-minute phosgene experiment contracted pneumonia and had been at death's door since the day before. His condition had deteriorated, although he still showed signs of life. Another was injected with 15 milliliters of potassium cyanate, and 20 minutes later he had lost consciousness. In 1983, Takao Matsumura from Keio University of Japan discovered a report on Unit Kamo's gas experiment. Skin damage caused by mustard gas and Lewisite bombs and general clinical observations. Written by former Surgeon Lieutenant Colonel Nako Ikeda of Unit Kamo, the report contains 47 pages and 3 attached diagrams. It contains a report from September 7th to 10th, 1940 in Mudanjiang, where 20 people were subjected to gas experimentation. Unit 731 placed the 20 victims in 3 zones, namely a bunker, a trench, and a shelter, and then subjected them to attacks with mustard gas to observe the effects of the poison and obtain related pathological data. The report notes,
The field guns fired 1,800 shots of mustard gas on Zone 1, 3,200 shots on Zone 2, and 4,800 shots on Zone 3. There were 5 subjects in Zone 1, 6 subjects in Zone 2, and 9 subjects in Zone 3.
After being exposed to the gas, the subjects were observed at regular intervals of 4 hours, 12 hours, 24 hours, 48 hours, and 72 hours, and their general symptoms, as well as the condition of their skin, eyes, respiratory organs, and digestive organs, were listed in a table. They were then given 3-digit code numbers to replace their names, the same method adopted by Unit 731 in treating Maruta. 3 reports on experiments preserved by the U.S. In November 2011, I went to the Science, Technology, and Business Division of the U.S. Library of Congress in Washington, D.C., to refer to materials on Unit 731 with the assistance of Ms. Tomoko Y. Steen, who helped me copy 3 reports written by Unit 731 members, namely Report A on anthrax, Report G on glanders, and Report Q on plague, Yersinia pestis. All of these are core documents detailing covert trading between the U.S. Army and Unit 731. Report A on anthrax bacteria. In Report A refers to anthrax, the universal code for anthrax, used by Unit 731. It contains 406 pages, all written in English. On the cover are the words, Technical Library of Dugway Proving Ground, May 6, 1960. From page 292 to page 311, the report contains information about pathology of glands. The word Dietrich could be in the captions on micrographs M3, 25, and M54. Fort Detrick was the secret U.S. research base for biological war. Therefore, it can be concluded that Report A was once held in Fort Detrick for the study of anthrax experimentation on human beings. Report A comprises two parts. The first part is a 16-page preface containing basic information about all the cases listed in the report. The second contains the results of detailed micro-research. The 30 cases recorded in the report were classified into 3 types according to channel of infection. The first group was 1 case of skin infection. The second group was 9 cases of oral infection. The third group involved 20 cases of respiratory infection through the nasal cavity, in contrast to the 22 cases implied in the ordinal numbers for cases in the report. Why would there be a difference of 2 cases from the number recorded in the preface? My assessment is that when Unit 731 helped the U.S. Army to translate the Japanese into English, something went wrong. From the overall analysis of the report, it can be confirmed that there were 20 cases of infection through nasal breathing, and 2 other cases were unclear and could not be confirmed. The report subsequently listed 30 cases of vivisection, all involving male adults. I organized the basic information about the victims based on the information in Report A, identification information about the victims, such as names, occupations, and places of birth, was all concealed by assigning them with Maruta numbers, with the exception of their age, which was documented to provide references for the experiments. All other information irrelevant to the experiment was deleted. In the report, the oldest subject was 40 years old, and the 5 youngest were all 25 years old. The average age of the subjects was 29.88 years. They were subjected to an average of 2.88 days of experimentation. With the help of microscopic examination, the infection routes, extent, and pathological information about the heart, liver, spleen, bronchial tubes, throat, lungs, stomach, intestines, kidneys, pancreas, adrenal glands, thyroid gland, testicles, pituitary gland, brain, skin, lymph nodes, and other organs were all noted in detail. The general situation of the 9 cases of oral infection in Report A is documented as follows.
Due to food infection of anthrax, the subjects all died of serious abdominal infection, ascites, and hemorrhage days later.
The general situation of the 20 cases of nasal infection is described thus.
Anthrax broke out in some cells, and 20 people were infected with anthrax bacteria carried by the air. Days later, they all died of serious chest or abdominal diseases. In the initial stage of their infection, they got severe tonsillitis, and then the bacteria spread in their bodies, leading to severe hemorrhage. There were 2 channels of the spread, bronchitis and oral cavity.
Report G on glanders. G refers to glanders, the code adopted by Unit 731. This 373-page report involves 21 victims. Report G contains 2 parts. The first part is the preface, including case information, infection degree, and the pathological process of each of the subjects. The second part documents infection and pathological information of various organs under microscopic observation, including heart, liver, spleen, bronchial tubes, throat, the lungs, the stomach, the intestines, the kidneys, the pancreas, the adrenal glands, the thyroid gland, the testicles, the pituitary gland, the brain, the skin, the lymph nodes, the thymus gland, and other organs. Report G also categorized the deaths of the victims. The first type was acute, with 8 cases. The pathological change was accompanied by sepsis, especially around the organs, although different from organic lesions. The second type was subacute, with 7 cases. The pathological change was about 2 weeks after infection. The victims showed severe systemic metastasis, especially lung disease accompanied by frequent pleuritic bleeding, with exudative lesions occurring in particular in the liver and lungs. The third type was subchronic, with 3 cases. The fourth type was chronic, with 3 cases. The pathological characteristics included lesions in liver, lungs, kidneys, muscles, thyroid gland, lymph nodes, and intestines due to systemic metastasis. Report Q on plague. Like Report A, the words Technical Library of Dugway, Proving Ground, May 6, 1960, also appear on the cover of Report Q. Here, Q refers to the code for plague experimentation. Unlike the others, the initial is not the first letter of the word. Report Q recorded that in 1940, 2 plague epidemics broke out in Changchun and Nong'an in China. Toshio Ishikawa, head of the pathology group, and Masahiko Takahashi, head of the plague group, carried out 57 vivisections from September 29th to November 6th. The report, first preserved in Fort Detrick and then transferred to the Dugway Proving Ground in Utah, noted the vivisections and was released in 1978. Report Q, which does not carry the name of its author, mentions in its preface that Dr. Takahashi and others investigated epidemiology and bacteriology. This Dr. Takahashi refers to the head of the plague group, Masahiko Takahashi, who wrote The Plague in Nong'an and Xinjiang in the 15th year of the Showa period. Every page of Report Q is numbered, and the final number is 744. Page 444 is missing, reducing the number of pages to 743 in reality. The report contains 453 images and 56 tables. It has 4 parts. The first part lasts from page 1 to page 263. The second part from page 264 to page 491. The third part from page 492 to page 58621. The fourth part from page 622 to page 744. The report records a total of 57 cases of vivisection, including 39 cases in a series of N and 18 cases in a series of S. It has been noted that N referred to Nong'an and S referred to Xinjiang, Changchun. With the help of microscopic inspection, the infection routes and extent of the heart, liver, spleen, bronchitis, throat, lungs, stomach, intestines, kidneys, pancreas, adrenal gland, thyroid gland, testicles, pituitary gland, ovaries, skin, lymph nodes, thymus gland, and other organs were taken down in detail. The vivisection cases are described as follows. All the 57 cases contained a mixture of males, females, elderly, and youths. According to various channels of etiology infection, the case number, name, age, gender, disease, and invading point of etiology were identified respectively. Conclusion. Taking into account the 3 reports conserved by the U.S. Library of Congress and the available Chinese and Japanese documents, the following conclusions can be drawn. 1. The 3 reports are the most comprehensive record of human experimentation among all the deciphered U.S. archives and provide essential evidence of human experimentation by Unit 731. They complement the information on special transfer discovered in the Heilongjiang archives and Jilin archives, and vice versa. They also provide proof of Unit 731's medical crimes in English, again complementing the Chinese and Japanese versions of archives, and they provide incontrovertible evidence exposing Unit 731's criminal experimentation on human beings. 2. The 3 reports contain detailed data, including infection channels, infection timelines, the process of organ lesions, and the causes of death. Unit 731 used them as important data for wartime research into anthrax, glanders, biological plague weapons, infection effects, selection of doses, and epidemic prevention. 3. The 3 reports contain detailed information about the time, location, implementers, and cases, from which the methods, means, scope, and content of Unit 731's pathological research can be identified, thus providing valuable evidence about the extent of its biological experimentation. 4. Every case recorded in the 3 reports was analyzed comprehensively as to the pathology and tendency of lesions and their causes, and the rate of infection through microscopic observation. Medically speaking, these are very informative reports. While studying and testing biological weapons, Unit 731 studied pathological vivisection and engaged in what it claimed to be medical research. But its goal was to serve the aggressive war against China, and its actions violated every principle of medical ethics and humanitarian spirit. End of Chapter 3. Chapter 4. Biological Warfare. For the purpose of bacteriological warfare, Unit 731 carried out large-scale outdoor experiments with bacteriological bombs, agents, and tactics. It sourced and purchased a large number of ground squirrels, rats, and rabbits for experiments, and produced fleas, lice, flies, and mosquitoes as carriers of diseases to conduct experiments on and research into at least 50 bacteria, including plague, caused by Yersinia pestis, cholera, typhoid, anthrax, tuberculosis, and glanders. From the date of the Nomonhan battles in 1939, biological weapons were widespread among various units, making use of the output of Unit 731, covering Inner Mongolia, Shandong, Zhejiang, Hunan, and Yunnan, and causing appalling casualties. Research and experiments on bacteriological weapons. The Inglis Report and the Thompson Report, collected by the National Archives and Records Administration of the U.S., contain an overall introduction to the bacteriological weapons manufactured by Unit 731, including research on both aggressive use of and defenses against biological weapons. Unit 731 conducted outdoor human experimentation on several cultivation and transmission methods of various bacteria, analyzing and reporting the test results and documenting the conclusions. According to the Thompson Report, Unit 731 studied several carrying channels for the pathogens, including bombs, shells, and aircraft spraying. From 1937 to 1942, it manufactured 1,770 biological bombs, divided into 7 types, with 300 each of type 1 and RO, the earliest versions, produced in 1937. UJ-150 was produced between 1940 and 1942 in the largest number, 500. The Inglis Report mentions HA, SI, and mother-daughter bombs, but did not document the year of production and the quantities of these 3 types of bombs. From this information, it can be determined that Unit 731 studied and tested at least 10 types of biological bombs. Ishii ceramic germ bombs. Ishii ceramic germ bombs, also called UJI-50 bombs, were a remodeled form of the old UJI bombs, with Ishii once more referring to the first commander of Unit 731. Like the Ishii water purifier, they were also products manufactured with the direct participation of Shiro Ishii. Basic structure. According to the Inglis report, Ishii ceramic germ bombs used shell cases of ceramic or diatomite with a weight of 25 kilos, kg, capacity of 10 liters, length of 69.6 centimeters, cm, and diameter of 17.8 centimeters. Their noses were installed with a delay mechanism and a 500-gram charge of TNT. The tail fuse could ignite 4 meters of detonating cord and detonate at a height of 200 to 300 meters. If the tail fuse or primacord malfunctioned, the nose explosive device could still guarantee the explosion and spread the germ contained within the bombs. Experimentation. Unit 731 conducted great numbers of field experiments on the Ishii ceramic germ bombs from 1941 to 1942, including static explosions and air explosions from an aircraft drop. The prototype bombs were packed with dye and non-pathogenic organic suspension, while the later ones were filled with anthrax spore suspension at an intensity of 50 to 100 milligrams per cubic centimeter. The Ishii ceramic germ bombs were designed to disperse fleas carrying plague germs. With a certain degree of permeability, the bombs could ensure the survival of infected fleas. The anthrax germ powder within the bombs could also be delivered with certainty and maintain a strong impact on targets. Production. Ishii ceramic germ bombs were produced in the greatest numbers. As mentioned above, from 1940 to 1942, Unit 731 produced 500 rounds. Judging from the shattered shell cases found on the original site of Unit 731 headquarters and on the sites of the germ shell manufacturing factories in Wangang Town, Nangang District, Harbin, in total one 5-floor office building, 2 kilns and 4 chimneys, the production of Ishii ceramic germ bombs was carried out in large numbers and on a large scale. HA bombs, basic structure. The 40-kilogram HA bomb was a germ bomb which threw out grenades carrying anthrax spores. It had double interlayers with a central explosion tube surrounded by a 10-millimeter casing of steel. Between this and the outer shell, there was a powder charge. The charge had a volume of 700 cubic centimeters and contained about 1,500 steel ball bearings to enhance its killing power. Both the powder carrier and the steel shell case were smeared with phenolic formaldehyde resin to prevent corrosion and were equipped with impact fuses in the nose and tail containing 3 kilograms of TNT, in addition to the charge carried in the central explosion cylinder. When it exploded, the HA bomb would cast both the bomb fragments and anthrax spores horizontally at high speed. Experimentation. From 1938 to 1939, Unit 731 carried out field experiments on HA bombs. In the static tests, the contents were dye solution and organic matter. A containment of wooden boards was placed around the center of the explosion to measure the size, distribution, and penetrative force of the fragments. Tests on animal subjects were also arranged in a similar way. During static tests in winter, data was obtained from fragmentary penetration of ice, and the fragments and grenades were cast over distances of 400 to 500 meters. Within a 50-meter radius, the density of fragment distribution was 1 per square meter. In some static experiments, the bombs were buried under 5 meters of sand, and further studies on the effects of fragments were conducted. After detonation, the size of the fragments could be estimated by filtering the sand. Among the recycled shell fragments, about 10% of fragments weighed 1 to 3 grams, 20% 3 to 5 grams, 5 grams, 25% 5 to 10 grams, 40% 10 to 15 grams, and 5% over 15 grams. Drawbacks. The HA bomb had the following 4 drawbacks. First, the design was overcomplicated and not suitable for mass production. Second, as the relatively thin bodies was welded together with the bomb nose and tail, the germs were prone to leak and could not survive the process of storage and transportation. Third, the bomb was a different size from standard aircraft bombs, making it difficult to suspend it from a plane. Fourth, the large explosive charges destroyed 40% to 65% of the germs, decreasing its killing power. I-bombs. Basic structure. The I-bomb might have been the first bomb studied and developed for the purpose of carrying germs in a liquid. A modified gas bomb, it detonated when its nose hit the ground. The tail separated, and the germ-carrying liquid was ejected. Experimentation. From 1937 to 1938, the bomb was tested through static explosion and aircraft delivery. In those tests, each bomb was packed to 70% of its volume. The charge included 0.1% fuchsine, 2% to 5% starch solution, and non-communicable pathogen. In order to assess the spread of the charge, pieces of test paper were placed every 20 meters to form a rectangular grid over an area of 50,000 square meters. During winter testing, snow was used to review the spread of the charge. Under a wind speed of 5 meters per second, the diffusion area of a static explosion could reach 1,000 to 2,250 square meters. When a bomb was delivered by air, it tended to plunge into the ground before detonation. The resultant pit was deep and funnel-shaped, and the resulting diffusion was ineffective. The depth of the pit depended on the height of the drop. When the bomb was dropped at a height of 1,000 meters, the pit would be 0.5 to 1 meters deep. When the height was 2,000 meters, the depth would be 1 to 1.5 meters. When the height was 4,000 meters, the depth of the pit would be 2.5 to 3 meters. However, I-bombs had the possibility of pounding into the earth before exploding, delaying the explosion time. An I-bomb was more likely to be a dud than other types of germ bombs. RO bombs. Basic structure. The RO bomb resembled the I-bomb in size and appearance. The design of the nose was novel, composed of a front chamber and a rear chamber. On ground impact, the front chamber would explode and throw the rest of the bomb airwards to a height of 10 to 15 meters. Then the rear chamber would explode, with the tail ejecting the germ charge. Experimentation. The germ charge and the experimentation methods of the RO bomb also resembled those of the I-bomb, in that it was packed to 70% of its volume, with a charge including 0.1% fuchsine, 2% to 5% starch solution, and a non-communicable pathogen. In order to assess the spread of the charge, pieces of test paper were placed every 20 meters to form a rectangular grid over an area of 50,000 square meters. In the static tests, the diffusion area was 4,000 to 9,000 square meters. Due to the shock induced by explosion, a funnel-shaped pit formed. Drawbacks. The RO bomb and the I-bomb both used a 12-year type Toka Shupatsu fuse, leading to similar problems. It meant that the RO also had a small size and the possibility of burying itself in the ground, and higher likelihood of becoming a dud. It was concluded that there were no solutions to the shortcomings of the RO bomb, and it was therefore abandoned. SI bombs. The SI bomb weighed 50 kilograms. It had a very similar design to the HA bomb, except that the SI body was 10 centimeters longer. Its capacity was 1 liter, but its explosive charge was only half that of the HA bomb. As a result, its germ charge had a higher survival rate, but its fragments had a limited force of penetration and a smaller diffusion area. U-bombs. Basic structure. The 30-kilogram U-bomb was designed to eject germ liquid by compressed air at a predetermined height. It was installed with a detachable nose on top of which was a nozzle. The bomb had a nose fuse and a delay tail fuse, as well as a tail timer, which would operate as the bomb dropped. The timer allowed the central explosion pipe to move forward and separate the nose from the nozzle. Compressed air was released by the functioning of the central explosion pipe, ejecting the contents of the bomb into the air through the nozzle. When the bomb hit the ground, it would detonate automatically. Drawbacks. Due to the leakage of germ stuff, flaws in the fuse, inaccuracy of the timer, and the complexity of its structure, it was concluded that the U-bomb had no real development value, and it was abandoned. Old UJI bomb, basic structure. Until 1938, Unit 731's germ bomb research and development featured simple design, large capacity, and minimum explosives, while trying to ensure effective diffusion of surviving germs to reach the maximum killing power. The early steel shell cases containing TNT explosives and black powder were abandoned because of damage to their germ charge. Later bombs were remodeled with ceramic and glass cases and limited charges of TNT explosive. As the UJI ceramic bomb was the result of the transformed research and development of germ bombs led by Shiro Ishii in the design process, the initial model of this bomb was called the old UJI bomb. The exterior of the ceramic case was carved with vertical grooves for the installation of 4 meters of primacord. The explosive charge was inserted through the nose on top of the bomb and locked by a screw metal cap. A nitrocellulose fin was installed on the pedestal of the bomb, while a time fuse was attached to the tail. This bomb would explode at a predetermined time. The explosion of the ceramic case spread the germ charge. Although the ceramic fragments had limited force of penetration, they were very hard to identify on the ground surface following detonation. This invisibility increased the bomb's killing power and the destruction it could cause. Experimentation. Unit 731 experimented on this type of bomb in 1938, using the same distribution method and carrying the same type of dye or starch, liquid and pathogen, as the Type I, RO, and HA bombs. In the static experiments, under a wind speed of 5 meters per second, the diffusion perimeter and area of detonation at a height of 15 meters were respectively 20 to 30 meters and 500 to 600 square meters. In airdrops, when the bomb exploded at a height of 200 to 300 meters, the diffusion perimeter was 20 to 30 meters with an area of 600 to 700 square meters. The size of the sprayed liquid particles was usually similar to that of a raindrop. But due to condensation, large drops would be possible with a diameter of 50 micrometers. Drawbacks. The old UJI bomb had the following 5 drawbacks. First, there was considerable leakage of fluid between the metal cap and the ceramic body, making the bomb fragile during transportation. Second, the incompatibility of weight and size of the body led to an inaccurate trajectory. Third, swelling of the germ charge meant that bombs could usually only carry a charge at 70% of full capacity, and the 30% empty space often led to the change of trajectory. Fourth, the fin of the ceramic bomb was easily deformed by heat, increasing the inaccuracy of airdrops. Meanwhile, at low temperatures, the ceramic case could be damaged or broken in flight. Fifth, because of flaws in the fuse, the height of detonation could not be controlled with precision. Due to the above 5 considerations, the old UJI bomb was deemed unsuitable for further development and was abandoned. GA bomb. Basic structure. The GA bomb was a trial version of UJI bomb with glass case and spiral groove rather than vertical grooves to carry the detonation fuse. Since the glass casing rendered it fragile and subject to damage during transportation, it was abandoned after a few preliminary tests. UJI 100 bombs. The UJI-100, with a weight of 50 kilograms and capacity of about 25 liters, was a bigger version of the UJI-50. From 1940 to 1942, Unit 731 conducted extensive tests based on similar methods adopted during the tests of UJI-50 and produced in total 300 rounds of UJI-100. Because of the size and the probability of leakage during transportation, this series was also abandoned, being considered to have no real value. Mother-daughter bombs. According to the English report, the mother-daughter bomb consisted of a mother bomb with wireless sending device and a daughter bomb containing a charge of bacteria. The mother bomb detonated on landing, followed by the daughter bomb. When the mother bomb hit the ground, its wireless signal would cease, causing the daughter bomb to detonate. But it was abandoned because of its high cost. Unit 731's research and design process was geared toward producing weapons featuring portability, convenience in attack, destructive power, and killing power. From 1937 to 1942, it conducted research into and testing of at least 10 types of germ bombs, addressing features such as the type of the bomb, selection of the carried liquid, destructive effects under different weather conditions, and production costs. In the Thompson report, Shiro Ishii claimed that these experiments were not implemented upon any official order because they were part of medical research for defensive purposes. According to the details in archives, it can be confirmed that the unit's research and production work had germ warfare as the ultimate goal. Research, design, and experimentation were carried out at all stages on a large scale, not as part of medical research for defensive purposes. The English report and the Thompson report, based on detailed data and blueprints deciphered by the U.S., further prove that Unit 731 did indeed carry out research, experiments, and production. Selection and testing of germ agents. In terms of records about the types of germ agents studied and produced by Unit 731, I mainly referred to the medical reports and research paper written by Unit 731, the post-war confessions to the U.S. Army, and the summary report by the U.S. based on its own investigations. Confessions of Tomasada Masuda and Enryo Hoho. The records of the questioning of Tomasada Masuda, the core member of Unit 731, by Thompson and Saunders, and also his paper Bacteriological Warfare, which was handed to the U.S. Army, detail his belief that 4 types of germ agent could be applied in bacteriological warfare. These were bacteria, plague, cholera, typhoid, dysentery, glanders, anthrax, undulant fever, tularemia, tuberculosis, tetanus, gas gangrene, botulinum toxin, diphtheria, staphylococcus, streptococcus, epidemic cerebrospinal meningitis, protozoa, Wells disease, recurrent fever, venereal disease, framboesa, malaria, kala-azar, rickettsia, typhus, cruptive typhus, tsutsugamushi, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, virus, Donga fever, yellow fever, smallpox, foot and mouth disease, rabies, epidemic meningitis, and epidemic anemia. Enryo Hoho, a core member of Unit 731, submitted the report about biological warfare to the U.S. Army, which stated that the following bacteria might be considered: agents for the human body, Vibrio cholerae, Bacillus dysenteriae, Bacillus paratyphosa, Fabris militensis, Malta fever, Bacillus pestis, Bacterium tularense, tularemia, Bacillus typhosus, yellow fever. Agents for animals, anthrax, glanders, pleuropneumonia, foot and mouth disease. Agents for plants, uredinales, plant pathogens. For wheat, potato rot, Bacillus aerodia, Bacterium beticola for potatoes and others. Accounts of Thompson, Fell, and Hill. The Thompson report noted that Shiro Ishii and Masaji Kitano confessed that the following were all covered by Unit 731's research: typhoid, paratyphoid, dysentery, cholera, plague, epidemic meningitis, pertussis, and gonococcus vaccine. Anatoxin research on gas gangrene, tetanus, diphtheria, and scarlet fever. Serum therapy on gas gangrene, tetanus, diphtheria, scarlet fever, dysentery, erysipelas, streptococci, staphylococci, pneumonia, epidemic meningitis, and plague. Rickettsia and vaccines were studied, including typhus, songo, rabies, fowlpox vaccine, and forest encephalitis. The Fell report recorded human experimentation into 9 germs, including anthrax, plague, typhoid, paratyphoid A and B, dysentery, cholera, glanders, and songo. The experimentation contents included direct infection, immunity, bombs, spraying, and stability. Hill interviewed 22 Unit 731 members and prepared a summary report, the Hill Report, which touched upon 29 agents studied and produced by Unit 731. Experiments and production of germ agents. Unit 731 established a germ research division and an experiment division to conduct systematic studies and testing on plague, cholera, and other germs. While researching and producing those agents, the major considerations involved mass production, low cost, heavy toxin, strong diffusion power, high resistance to the external environment, and no trace left behind. During production, Unit 731 used the most advanced equipment and facilities back in Japan and conformed to production procedures and standards for biological products. It set up a complete system integrating the research, production, storage, transportation, and usage of germ agents. It studied attack strategies for the germs, including spraying the germs and dropping germs and germ media from aircraft. As the primary material for biological weapons, germ agents provide the essential evidence of biological war crimes. With the help of the archives and the confessions of the veterans, the basic situation at the time can be defined. Kiyoshi Kawashima, the head of the Biological Production Division of Unit 731, confessed that every month, Unit 731 cultivated 800 to 900 kilograms of typhoid germs, about 600 kilograms of anthrax, and 1 kilogram of cholera, paratyphoid, and dysentery germs. As to the output in real terms of Branch 1 of the Germ Production Division, he continued that every month it produced the following: plague 100 kilograms, anthrax 200 kilograms, typhoid 300 kilograms, paratyphoid A 300 kilograms, cholera 330 kilograms, and dysentery 300 kilograms. In 1942, when biological war was being conducted in Zhejiang and Jiangxi, the Biological Production Division headed by Kiyoshi Kawashima produced 130 kilograms paratyphoid and anthrax germs for the troops involved. In addition to Unit 731, other Japanese biological units in China, such as Unit 100 in Changchun, Unit 1855 in Beijing, Unit 1644 in Nanjing, and Unit 8604 in Guangzhou, also conducted large-scale research into and production of agents. It has been estimated that if distributed in a scientific way, 3 grams of pure germ could contaminate all the water resources within an area of 8 square kilometers. If all of the thousands of grams of germs produced by the Japanese army had been deployed, they could have wrought unimaginable havoc on mankind. Use of biological warfare and damage caused. The volume of biological weapons and agents produced by Unit 731 was enough to wipe out the whole of humankind. Where they were deployed, Japan's biological weapons caused huge damage to their victims. The available information provides ample evidence that Unit 731 and other biological warfare units carried out large-scale biological warfare in 2008, Hulunbuir, Changchun, Nong'an, Western Shandong, Shangrao, Guangfeng, Nanjing, Hangzhou, Ningbo, Kuzhou, Jinhua, Yiwu, Yunhei, Jiangshan, Longyu, Lishui, Changsha, Changde, and western Yunnan, leading to outbreaks of plague, cholera, typhoid, and other fulminating infectious diseases, killing large numbers of victims, and causing a serious threat to the ecology and the environment in these areas of China, and placing human development and even survival at risk. Biological warfare in the Nomonhan incident. The Nomonhan incident involved Japan, Puppet Manchukuo, the Soviet Union, and Mongolia in the border regions of China and Mongolia between May and September 1939. It ended in comprehensive defeat for Japan. The National Archives of Japan record that at noon on July 7, 1939, No. 78 Combat Order of the Kwantung Army, issued by Commander Kenkichi Ueda to Shiro Ishii, directed Unit 731 to carry weapons to Hailar for the Nomonhan battles around the General's Temple. This was the first time that Unit 731, under the orders of the Kwantung Army, had engaged in biological warfare. Kwantung Army Staff Officer Lieutenant Colonel Kichiro Yamamoto and Major Tsuneshige Ikari of Unit 731 were instructed to initiate the biological war by dropping cholera, typhoid, and dysentery on 3 occasions at the Kalka River. Veteran Yoshio Tamura confessed that under the instructions of Yamaguchi of the Epidemic Prevention and Water Purification Department of the Kwantung Army, 6 team members supplied contaminated biological shrapnel in about 2,000 shells to be fired by field guns in the frontier area of Nomonhan. From early July to late August in 1939, the veteran was part of the germ production team, which produced typhoid, cholera, and typhus for biological war. He took about 1 kilogram of germs to General's Temple and Hailar. Together with 3 others from Group Tabei, he injected 30 milligrams of typhoid germs per 1 milliliter solution into 2 barrels of kerosene. On the second day, he and another 2 transported this material to General's Temple and supplied them to Warrant Officer Nanba from the Tsuneshiga Ikari Storm Force of the Kwantung Army Epidemic Prevention and Water Purification Department. The germs were sprayed into the Khalkhin River as part of the so-called biological strategic war. Unit 731 carried out at least 4 biological attacks during the Nomonhan incident. A set of pictures preserved in the National Institute for Defense Studies of the Japanese Ministry of Defense were taken by the photography class of Unit 731 and record epidemic prevention operations conducted by Unit 731 on the Nomonhan battlefield. This was because the majority of water sources on the Nomonhan battlefield had been polluted with germs. Unit 731 carried out a large-scale water purification operation to protect the Kwantung Army from infection. Shiro Ishii was even commended and honored by the headquarters of the Kwantung Army for his contribution during the Nomonhan incident. Biological warfare in Changde. Chen Wengui, the then director of the inspection group of the former Emergency Medical Service Training School in Guiyang, wrote a report on the plague in Changde, Hunan, on December 12, 1941, in which he described the outbreak, transmission, damage, and impact of the epidemic. According to the report, at 1700 on November 4, 1941, Japanese aircraft flew very low over Changde and dropped materials such as ears of rice, cotton, scraps of paper, and fleas in the vicinity of Guanmiao Street, Jia Alley, and Dongmen. On the 11th, the first case of plague was identified. The victim was Kai Tao-er, an 11-year-old girl living on Guanmiao Street, who died on the 13th. Subsequently, several more cases of death from plague occurred. Chen Wengui's team went to Changde to investigate further and confirmed that all 6 cases were glandular plague. By November 24th, 17 people had died from plague in Changde. Chen Wengui wrote in the report that 7 days after the Japanese air raid, glandular plague was rampant in Changde. All smears went through clinical examination by Chen Wengui and Tan Shuihua. The medical records of victims, post-mortem examination, and bacteriological examination all proved to be similar to Yersinia pestis. Rong Qirong, the former director of the Division of Epidemic Prevention of the Department of Health, compiled the report on the process of plague prevention and treatment in western Hunan, which said that from November 11, 1941 to July 9, 1942, 42 patients were infected with plague in Changde, and there were 37 deaths. Due to inadequate medical and health facilities, the slow government response, the ineffective actions, and the lack of public support, the official data were far from accurate. Chen Wengui and Rong Qirong had insufficient data. While the plague in Changde broke out in 1941, deaths were still occurring from the same cause in 1945. As a result, the initial statistics concerning this plague provide only a snapshot of the real situation. Even so, Qirong's report identified clearly the cause of this plague. In November 1996, Changde established the Investigation Committee of Germ Warfare Victims, a non-government investigation organization composed of retired teachers, doctors, workers, and families of germ warfare victims. According to its documents, from 1996 to 2002, the committee investigated 9 districts and counties in Changde and interviewed over 300,000 people, forming 15,000 complaints, which confirmed the damage caused by the Japanese army through biological warfare in Changde. At that time, the urban area of Changde, together with 70 surrounding townships and 485 natural villages, provided evidence of an outbreak of plague causing 7,643 deaths. Detailed information on each case was collected, including the name, gender, time, and location of death, and the referee of the victim. Liu Yi wrote the historical investigation into the 12 cases recounted by victims of germ warfare in Changde, which recorded the contents of the interview with Fang Yunsheng.
My older brother Fang Yundeng died of the plague in 1941. He was only 8 years old. After his death, my grandmother was very distressed and became mentally ill. She constantly wandered the streets at night, calling my brother's name in the hope of bringing him home. When I was a boy, my grandma often took my hand while she walked the streets, calling on my brother to come home.
Biological warfare in Kuzhou. According to Qiu Mingxuan, the former chief of the Health and Epidemic Prevention Station in Kuzhou, Zhejiang, between 9 and 9:30 on October 4, 1940, Japanese aircraft made 2 passes over Kuzhou and sprayed plague-infected wheat, soybeans, wheat brands, cloth, cotton, fleas, and pamphlets. In early December, an unprecedented plague broke out in the town, which then spread to rural areas. On May 26, 1942, the Japanese launched a second biological attack on Kuzhou, spraying plague-carrying fleas from aircraft and dispatching ground troops to spread fleas along the supply lines between Zhejiang and Jiangxi and infect local wells, food sources, and inhabited areas with cholera, typhoid, paratyphoid, dysentery, and anthrax. In early September, Jiangshan, Kuxian, Kaihua, and Longyu, all on the supply lines between Zhejiang and Jiangxi, experienced outbreaks of plague, cholera, typhoid, paratyphoid, dysentery, malaria, anthrax, and other communicable diseases. At the same time, the Japanese army carried out random shellings of the area, making disease prevention and control extremely difficult until the end of 1948, when the epidemic was finally brought under effective control. Based on 3 key elements: the source of infection, transmission channels, and susceptible population, the transmission and prevalence of the epidemic in Kuzhou displayed the typical characteristics of a primary man-made epidemic and led to a large number of casualties among innocent civilians. From 1998 to 2000, A special survey in Kuzhou confirmed that 5,294 people died as a result of Japanese germ warfare. Of the victims, 1,501 died from plague, 909 from cholera, 2,272 from typhoid and paratyphoid, 407 from dysentery, and 205 from anthrax. Among the victims, 3,748 were men, 1,546 were women, and 871 were children under the age of 10. The oldest victim was 83 years old, and the youngest was only 3 months old. The tragedy involved a large number of pregnant women dying in the epidemic, together with their unborn babies. In addition to creating the large-scale plague epidemic in Kuzhou, the Japanese army carried out biological attacks on Jinhua, Yiwu, Ningbo, and Lishui in October 1940, leading to widespread epidemics and casualties in those regions. According to the investigation report of 1999 in the Yiwu Exhibition Hall, the list of compatriot victims from plague in the Japanese germ warfare in Yiwu, Zhejiang, 1941 to 1943. Japan's biological attack on Yiwu killed 1,315 people. Yunhei County of Zhejiang Province compiled the List of Compatriot Victims of Japanese Biological Warfare during World War II on the basis of surveys and documented 781 deaths from biological war. The number of deaths in Changde, Yiwu, Yunhei, and Kuzhou alone reached 15,033, and these were not the areas worst hit by biological attacks, which have yet to be fully investigated. It is estimated that the real number of deaths among Chinese soldiers and citizens due to Japanese biological warfare could be even higher, including a huge number of innocent civilians, women, and children. Japan eventually abandoned its chemical and biological weapons research in China, involving 100 locations in 19 provinces, municipalities, and autonomous regions. But although the war ended in China, the resulting damage and other effects lingered on. From the end of World War II till the present, 747 people have died as a result of the chemical weapons left by Japan in Dunhua, Jilin, where the largest numbers of chemical weapons were buried. In 1974, an incident caused by the chemical weapons abandoned by Japan in Jiamusi, formerly Kiamuzi, Heilongjiang left 3 people severely injured and deprived of their ability to work and earn their livelihood. In 2003, another incident related to toxic agents left by Japan occurred in Chikihar, leaving 1 dead and 43 injured. Since World War II, abandoned Japanese chemical weapons have caused more than 2,000 casualties in China. Even today, they still represent a significant threat to local people's lives, property, water sources, land safety, and the ecological environment, and their impact is still felt. In 1995, the civil society inaugurated a campaign of lawsuits against Japan by Chinese victims of biological warfare. Confronted with overwhelming facts and evidence, the Tokyo local court, in a verdict delivered on May 15, 2003, had to recognize that the Japanese army had in fact manufactured and used chemical weapons during its invasive war in China. But it argued that the Japanese government didn't have effective means to avoid the damage, infinitely delaying the Japanese apologies, self-examination, and compensation to the Chinese victims. This long-lasting civil movement was carried out solely by voluntary non-government organizations. It failed to gain the support and assistance of the Chinese government. When its claims for damages were rejected, it fell into a dilemma. The situation deserves our attention. Citizens of a victimized country have lodged litigation against the government of the invading country, in the invading country, with the assistance of lawyers from the invading country. Could such action have any prospect of success? Then, under the circumstance of total failure, what will be the way out for the lawsuits against Japan? Post-war woes, plague in Pingfang. To prepare for and carry out the biological war, Unit 731 purchased and collected a great many animal subjects and cultivated large volumes of infective media. The unit carried out its work over a long period and on a large scale, experimenting on large numbers of animals of many different types. The consequences are a long-term threat to the environment and to ecological diversity. In particular, the large-scale and wide-ranging plague experiments gave rise to large quantities of plague germs and weapons, turning Pingfang, where Unit 731 was located, into a powder keg. Before fleeing, Unit 731 bombed the architecture and facilities to the ground, releasing large numbers of experimental subjects such as mice and fleas into the local countryside. This powder keg detonated, and a plague broke out in Pingfang. In late July 1946, Ms. Dong, wife of Xu Hongyu from Ho-Erdaugu, was the first to contract the plague and die. Following her death, Jing Ruxian caught the plague and died with his wife Ms. Song and their 2 children, one of whom was 5 and the other 2. Within 20 days, 12 people had died in the Jing family, leaving only 7 survivors of a family of 19. Jing Ruxian's mother, Miss Yang, was utterly devastated. Her son Jing Fuhe later recalled the terrible experience.
Our house was located in the worst-hit area of Pingfang. Our family originally consisted of 19 members, but 12 were killed by the plague in a period of less than 20 days. First to go were my father, my elder sister, and my younger brother, followed by all the others. The survivors were overwhelmed with the work of taking care of the sick. My mother tended my father, and I took care of my younger brother. My father and my brother lay on each side of one bed, leaving no room for my sister. So we had to take her to the straw shed and watch her waiting for death to take her. She had a low fever and lumps around the bottom of her neck swollen to the size of her head. She shouted in pain, but we could not make out any words. Lying in the shed alone, with no one by her side, she screamed in agony as she died. Hardly had the hearse for my sister arrived when my father stopped breathing. His body was still on the bed when my brother, his eyes bulging, vomited out 2 mouthfuls of black fluid. He died soon after my father and sister. My brother could barely talk after he fell sick. No matter how hard I tried to communicate with him, he lay silent. I watched him die in front of me. Whenever these memories come back to me, I feel the same bitterness and grief. The moaning of my father tortured by plague, my sister dying alone in the straw shed, and my brother dying with his eyes wide open. All of these scenes are seared indelibly upon my mind.
50 people in Ho-Erdaugu contracted this plague. Every one of them died. The youngest was 2 years old and the oldest was 71. Some entire families were wiped out by the disease. At the same time, Yifayuan and Dongjingzi were also enduring severe plague. There were 41 cases in Yifayuan and 38 in Dongjingzi. Again, all the victims died. According to the Working Condition of Plague Epidemic Prevention in Harbin, compiled in 1946, the rural areas in Pingfang lacked primary health organizations, hospitals, and clinics. 2 months after the outbreak of the plague, Harbin managed to implement basic epidemic prevention and control through division of the affected areas, quarantine, inspection and diagnosis, on-the-scene disinfection, and preventative injection. The epidemic continued to run until 1954. Although Unit 731 had been razed to the ground in 1945, the damage and danger it brought to Harbin continued. From 1946 to 1954, 143 people died of the plague in Harbin, placing a huge psychological burden on the local citizens, who also suffered great economic loss. Even worse was the impact on the animal species in the neighborhood of Pingfang. The ecology of the local mouse population was transformed by plague-infected animals, rendering Pingfang the only man-made source of plague in the world and bringing endless grief to the inhabitants. End of chapter 4.